the English Entourage series. Support, coaching, and clarification.
Hey, Seminole State family, welcome to the English Entourage series. I'm Nicole Sotak, a faculty librarian here at Seminole State College of Florida, where we are serious about your success. Your English Entourage has assembled to provide support, coaching, and clarification on information literacy topics and skills pertaining to your English 1 course. And tonight I will be playing a pre-recorded conversation among librarians that focuses on select Week 10 topics for English 1, including assessing and evaluating sources. If and when it seems necessary, I may pause the recording and add commentary. If you are watching live and have specific questions during tonight's broadcast, please drop them in the live chat for this video or text 407-915-3674. If you are watching the replay, we want to hear from you as well. Links to our 24/7 library chat and appointment services can be found in the description box below. Our Week 10 session features librarians Dr. Elena Solto, Ross Martin, and information Jason Amfinson. So let's get it rolling. All right. And starting off with the bang, we got Ross real loud here, starting us off.
Hi, everybody. Today, what we are talking about is evaluating the information we've found in our searches, right? Part of going to, doing these college projects is that we need to choose sources that, meet academic standards, right? So we're really talking about 4 things. When we talk about this, we're talking about things like the credibility of the author, right? Like, why are they, an authority on this topic? Why do we trust them? That kind of stuff there, or who's publishing this information? Why do we trust them? We're also looking at things like their point of view. Why are they telling us this information? Is it informational, or is it, to entertain? Do they have a certain agenda to presenting this information in that light? We also want to consider things like the date. Currency is really important. I was talking to a student not that long ago, and I asked them, how they apply that in their real life. And they said, well, they work at Publix and they have to check the dates every single day. And I said, wow, that is a really good application of this for information literacy, right? And then we're also talking about content appropriateness. Really what we mean is relevancy there. And that's kind of a subjective idea, but we're going to be evaluating these sources to make sure that they meet all of our needs, right? Like, do they meet the topic needs? Do they meet the assignment needs? All of that kind of stuff.
And jumping in here, Ross, make sure there is an expert. We talked about an author's expertise, but you may look on the internet and not find anyone as the source. And I'm asking you, who wrote that? So you should be asking yourself that, especially for an assignment. And also, if there is no date, consider the same process. Why is there no date? Why is there no author? Again, we're evaluating, we're analyzing, we're really scrutinizing whatever sort of synonym you want to put in here. But we want to make sure that what we're using in our paper that we're paying for, that we're getting credit for, that's going on our permanent college transcript, and then we're hopefully getting a degree for, has a good, reliable, credible information source, and there's got to be a date on there. So I just wanted to interject. Anything on that, Elena?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking at author expertise, just because they have some credential behind their name doesn't mean that they are an expert on the topic that they are presenting this information. So if they have a PhD on medieval literature, they may not be an expert on politics.
Yeah.
They, just because they are an expert in one area doesn't mean that they are an expert in all areas.
Yeah, the example I use is the three of us have advanced higher ed degrees, but we're good in a classroom in a library college setting. But if you put us up in an airplane, can anybody fly an airplane with our degrees? Raise your hand. I don't see any
Absolutely
hands.
not.
I don't see any hands. So authority is contextual, right? So we're definitely talking about the experts in their chosen field. And a good example I like to use is Indiana Jones. Has anyone ever heard of Indiana Jones? Goes on these adventures, but is an archaeologist, right? And yeah, he gets into these kind of troubles with some bad guys who are always trying to steal sort of the cultural heritage from different countries. But he is good in that field. And so remember, just if there's a date and an author, that's a good start, and then we'll keep going from there. So expertise, Ross.
Yeah. So when we're looking at expertise, this could mean a few different things, right? But you always want to ask yourself, who is telling me this information?
So
Authority
real
on
quick,
this topic, why do we trust them?
real quick before Ross continues on, these are some aspects that you are going to want to pay attention to if perhaps you've submitted an English 1 assignment and the professor has asked you to get more sources, better sources, take a closer look at your sources. These are some of the aspects that we'd want to look at for sure.
That kind of stuff there, or who's publishing this information, why we trust them. We're also looking at things like their point of view. Why are they telling us this information? Is it informational, or is it to entertain? Are they do they have a certain agenda to presenting this information in that light? We also want to consider things like the date. Currency is really important. I was talking to a student not that long ago, and I asked them how they apply that in their real life, and they said, well, they work at Publix, and they have to check the dates every single day. And I said, wow, that is a really good application of this for information literacy, right? And then we're also talking about content appropriateness. Really what we mean is relevancy there. And that's kind of a subjective idea, but we're going to be evaluating these sources to make sure that they meet all of our needs, right? Like, do they meet the topic needs? Do they meet the assignment needs? All of that kind of stuff.
And jumping in here, Ross, make sure there is an expert. We talked about an author's expertise, but you may look on the internet and not find anyone as the source. And I'm asking you, who wrote that? So you should be asking yourself that, especially for an assignment. And also, if there is no date, consider the same process. Why is there no date? Why is there no author? Again, we're evaluating, we're analyzing, we're really scrutinizing whatever sort of synonym you want to put in here. But we want to make sure that what we're using in our paper that we're paying for, that we're getting credit for, that's going on our permanent college transcript, and then we're hopefully getting a degree for, has a good, reliable, credible information source, and there's got to be a date on there. So I just wanted to interject. Anything on that, Elena?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're looking at author expertise, just because they have some credential behind their name doesn't mean that they are an expert on the topic that they are presenting this information. So if they have a PhD on medieval literature, they may not be an expert on politics.
Yeah.
They, just because they are an expert in one area doesn't mean that they are an expert in all areas.
Yeah, the example I use is the three of us have advanced higher ed degrees, but we're good in a classroom in a library college setting. But if you put us up in an airplane, can anybody fly an airplane with our degrees? Raise your hand. I don't see any hands.
Absolutely not.
I don't see any hands. So authority is contextual, right? So we're definitely talking about the experts in their chosen field. And a good example I like to use is Indiana Jones. Has anyone ever heard of Indiana Jones? Goes on these adventures, but is an archaeologist, right? And yeah, he gets into these kind of troubles with some bad guys who are always trying to steal sort of the cultural heritage from different countries. But he is good in that field. And so remember, just if there's a date and an author, that's a good start. And then we'll keep going from there. So expertise, Ross.
Yeah. So when we're looking at expertise, this could mean a few different things, right? But you always want to ask yourself, who is telling me this information? Because their qualifications are going to determine their authority on this, right? So sometimes when we're talking about this author, or maybe it is an organization, right? We want to consider things like their experience, right? This is interesting because, when we talk about a lot of these organizations that are out there, they may not be run by people with PhDs. A lot of government offices don't necessarily have PhDs in it, but they are the water authority in Central Florida. Well, okay, so like they know about this area, they know about the waterways, that kind of stuff. I work with a lot of construction classes here at the college, and when we're talking about experience in the field, a lot of people who have construction PhDs aren't putting roofs on houses, right? They're the ones teaching the construction classes, right? So experience in that field goes a long way. If you've been doing that, putting roofs on houses in Florida for 30 years, chances are you are a legitimate expert on that.
And a lot of those, and a lot of trades have their own career pathway where they become master builders, master masons. So just because it's not a, academic credentialing doesn't mean they aren't experts.
That's correct. If you take somebody who's lived on a street in the same city their entire life, I think they know a thing or two about that street and that neighborhood and that city. Let's say they're 99 years old. They know a thing or two. Do they need a PhD to know what happens in that street or how things work in that neighborhood or that community? No. So authority is contextual. It happens in different places. Ross was talking about Publix earlier. The person who works at Publix knows where everything is on all the aisles, right? They know how to check the stock room. They know the pricing and they know all this stuff. But then you take them out of there and then you put them in the DMV. And maybe they don't have the same expertise. So again, what are we looking at? Is this source related to what our research is about? And then is there an author and is there a date? And then yes, you may want to look at the author and try to find out more information about them because many of your assignments are actually calling for that, which is why we're trying to help you today.
And on that note, the elements that we're discussing here and looking at as far as part of assessing or evaluating sources, those are aspects of citations, which is something that you have to do anyway for your research papers and for most other assignments. So just pro tip, pay attention. These things are what you actually put in your citations. So you're not really doing extra work. You're going to have to look at these things anyway.
Yeah, so something else you want to consider is the education, especially when we're talking about academic type of research, right? It kind of goes with the territory that somebody's going to have either a master's degree or a PhD or some kind of credential that really shows us that they have the education in that field. Like they've learned, they've done the homework, so we can trust them on that level. The last thing I wanted to mention here is kind of a unique area. I have it labeled as special expertise. What I mean there is expertise can exist outside of even like the experience. Now, experience is kind of tied into some of these things here. I always look at my little tiny city where I live in. We have a historical society, and nobody there is a historian or has ever been a historian. They're people who this is like their hobby almost. They've studied the local area, kind of like Jason was just saying, right? Like they've lived here. They know everything about it. They've studied these documents. So, when I moved to my town and I asked like what my town was like 150 years ago, they were able to show me like, oh yeah, this is where there were actual farms back then before it was a real city. And your yard was actually an old orange grove. And that explains a lot about my neighborhood, why there's orange trees everywhere. But, they were able to provide this expertise just because like they have studied this and they've lived this, but they're not necessarily true like educational or even like experience experts. So something to consider there. The next thing we want to talk about, anytime I consider who's telling me information, I also want to consider why they're telling me it, right? I mean, information exists for all different kinds of purposes. And the way it's presented to you is going to determine, well, maybe not determine is not the right word. It's going to kind of point us towards their goal, right? If they're just telling us information, these are facts. Okay, it's going to be presented a certain way, probably pretty clearly, pretty concisely, pretty straightforward, but if it's more of like a personal expression, if it's somebody's opinion piece, well, it might not be as clear. It might be more of a philosophical kind of argument, or if it's for entertainment, I mean, it might not even be true, right? Like, we have to consider all of those things. It might just be for fun. Something else that we always want to consider is the date of your information. This doesn't always matter. I mean, some topics, some sources are kind of evergreen. And that is even kind of a philosophical discussion we could have. I just recently, I had a philosophical conversation about the validity of literature criticism from 50 or 100 years ago. And I could see different perspectives on that, right? Like, is the topic still being studied the same way? Do we still look at this person the same way? Maybe not. But that's something you want to consider, because information can get outdated. In some fields, particularly medical fields and scientific fields, information is superseded much more rapidly, right? New stuff comes out about like a medical topic like every year. So something that's even a couple years old might not be the most recent evidence that we have out there. Whereas, like I mentioned, like historic topics they might last forever, right? We might still be studying them the same way, more or less. But it's just something you have to ask yourself anytime you consider a piece of information. Is this still current? Could I find more recent information? Does that more recent information still agree with it? That kind of stuff.
Agreed. And what's funny is sometimes I tell my class, Emily Dickinson hasn't written anything in years, so something 50 years ago is just as accurate. However, they found some new writings that were hidden away. So that may not always be the case. So looking with scrutiny at your source and deciding, hey, this is still appropriate, or something, this really is no longer appropriate, because as Ross said, we change the way we approach subjects, we change our outlooks, and so the way they looked at it 50 years ago may no longer be appropriate.
Yeah, you may.
Elena made a great point here, and you can probably kind of get the idea about that. Things like, let's say, just for example, women's rights are going to be looked at differently today than 50 years ago. But besides some of those sociological topics, also think about in times past, like the worldview of people, living in a world with less technology, living in a world with different activities, different daily life ways. That can also be an interesting aspect to consider when you're looking at the authorship of a source as well.
Look back 20 years ago and you may see somebody on the cover of a music or entertainment magazine, and they may say, this person is the next big thing of the industry. And then flash forward to 20 years later, here in the present, that person may be incarcerated, or they may be on trial. Or another way to look at it is, do you want to know how much money you had in your bank account 5 years ago, or how much you have now? Right? Ross had talked about folks working at Publix, and they know the dates on the food. You put something in your fridge, that's a good date, but you open it up maybe a year later and it's kind of green and slimy and leaking and it doesn't look good. You're not going to eat that, are you? So we're always evaluating information. It's no different here at the college. We just need to change our focus a little bit more and really scrutinize just a little bit further.
So the last thing I like to talk about when we're evaluating a source, just at the surface level here, we need to know if that source is actually relevant to our needs. Ideally, once we've gotten to that point, we've already identified what we actually are looking for, what kind of information need we have. I mean, it might be assigned to us. We might need to only use scholarly articles, but we want to ask ourselves, does this answer our question? When we started this, we before we ever searched, we had a research question, right? Like, we had to be looking for something. right? So does this meet our needs? It might have assignment needs. A book written for fourth graders is probably not going to be appropriate for a college level project. And, we want to, when we're talking about college research here, we want to be sure we trust our experts, right? Like our opinion when we write our paper and we're presenting an argument is largely dictated by the experts we trust, right? Like because of this expert's, findings, that's why I think this, right? So as you're reviewing your information, don't just stop at that first source and go, yeah, it looks good. Make sure it checks all of your boxes before you commit to it.
Yeah, and the expert in the field too, especially I'm thinking about books and book reviews. I mean, I can ask my mom, who will read a book every single day, and be like, how was it? And she's like, oh, excellent. That's the overview. Thanks, Mom. That is not a literary criticism, right? They're not getting into details about the characters, the plot, the themes of the book. I'm just getting an excellent. So again, with respect to my mom, yes, could be a book lover, a good reader, but not an expert in the field, not somebody's information that I want to take and put into my literary criticism assignment or something like that. I'd probably go to a library database and really look at critics who that's what they do. They've written books on this. They're really able to establish who the characters are, what the themes of the stories are. And that's something you should think about. What else have these folks published? Maybe look them up. Do they have a personal website? Is their picture available online? What about their email to continue a scholarly conversation? These are all sort of hallmarks that one should look for, especially if they're going to be in a college class like you are, and you're going to be evaluating these sources for credibility for your assignments.
But also look at what you already have. And say you have to have 5 resources for a paper, and you found 4, which really fills a lot of the gaps that the information that you're looking for. But then you're looking for that last one. You're like, and you choose one because it kind of talks about it. It doesn't really give you any new information on the topic. Don't settle for that kind of reference. Find references that provide unique information to your paper, because if you have 5 unique references that have a lot of information that you can use, it's so much easier to write your paper. It might have been convenient to just choose a couple of these references because, yeah, okay, now I don't have to search anymore. But if you have some really good references, your paper is going to be so much easier to read because they'll be filled with robust information.
On that note, totally agree with Elena. Great point. It's kind of like doing more work up front to save yourself some pain and suffering on the back end of trying to finish an assignment with inadequate information. Librarians, wherever you are, if you are watching and you go to school at Seminole State College, that would be some of us here that you see on the screen. But if you are a student at another institution, your librarians at your institution, their job is to help you, coach you with finding more sources. So we're your coach. We don't jump on the field with you. We don't do the work for you. But if you're having trouble finding more sources or understanding how your professor has asked you to analyze and evaluate a source, that's what we're here for, along the lines of tutoring. Okay.
And we're doing these kinds of searches, Elena, all the time. Again, in real life. If you're looking for a shirt, you're not just going to the shirt store and buying the shirt and leaving. I don't know. Maybe, Ross. Maybe you and I are. Maybe we already know what shirt we're looking for. But what about a house? Oh, that one. That'll do. Oh, that one's already sold. Oh, okay. What about a car? Are you
or maybe a
researching
doctor?
Everything.
Sometimes you don't go with the first diagnosis. You go to others for other opinions.
And what is hanging on the wall, hopefully, when you go to a doctor's office? That is a mirror of their credentials. All their degrees are there, or a dentist. Actually, I was just talking about my mom, and she's texting me right now. I got a new book. So there, that's how the world works.
She knew.
She knew. Moms know that they're being talked about. But always look for that information. Again, you don't want to, I mean, would you let your neighbor who has a pair of pliers take your tooth out? I don't think so. You're probably going to go to the dentist, right? I mean, we wouldn't do these weird things in real life. So why would you do them here in academia? Why would you wait until 11:59 p.m. and just grab the first source you see on an internet search? That's not going to help you. So really evaluate who wrote this, when was it written, why was it written, and then where was it published? Who published it? All of this is real, credible, reliable research that you need to do on the source, in addition to researching in the paper. So it's kind of like a double research, right?
Absolutely. And if you do all of these fairly well, once again, your paper is going to be much easier to write than if you kind of skimped on all of these, this step of the process. Do this step well, and it will benefit you for the rest of the paper.
Right. And we're trying to get you to get into lifelong learning skills. As I'm mentioning some sort of real life scenarios, you're going to be doing this forever. We're going to be researching all these things. You might buy a house, you might have a kid, you might buy a car, you might go on a trip somewhere around the world where you don't know the language, the currency, anything about the country. I mean, you might end up there. What are you going to do then if you don't have these good research skills? So becoming an informed citizen through these information literacy skills, that's really what we're talking about here, because we want you to keep researching. We want you to be a lifelong learner, and all three of us continue to do this. We're always researching, looking at new things. Oh, what's that? So have a curiosity, be curious about it, and really give yourself enough time to do the research. Please don't wait until the last minute. Please don't wait until the last minute. This is not a skip. This is not a glitch. Please don't wait until the last minute. Please don't wait until the last minute. Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right. So again, yes, I concur. Do not wait until the last minute. Do not wait until the last minute. Again, librarians at your institution, perhaps you're watching from Seminole State College. If not, Seminole State College accepts students from all around the world. So if you want to enroll, go ahead and check out our website, and would love to have you join us as part of our family. So I had Andre P. I put the wrong text number in the chat, so I did correct it. It's actually 407-915-3674. Again, at any time you can text that tomorrow, and we're gonna see that text come through to our chat service. And you can also indicate that you watched the show today and that you need that credit. So thanks for watching, and thanks for joining us. And remember, we are librarians. We are here for you. We are your English entourage, here to provide information literacy support, coaching, and clarification for ENC 1101 at Seminole State College of Florida. All the English Entourage broadcasts can be found in the English Entourage playlist on this channel at Seminole State Live on YouTube. You can make a research appointment with us, or you can use our 24/7 library chat. Those and additional contact options will be linked in the description box below, as well as on the library website. And if you like hanging out with librarians, give us a like, share. Sorry, I had to grab that. Give us a like and a share and a subscribe today. We have lots of different things going on the channel, tutorials, fun stuff. We do fun research topics, and we love to have engagement and keep conversations going with students and faculty and staff and other librarians. Okay, yep, thank you. And Pascal, okay, thanks. And I did get it, so. All right, and that concludes everything today. We hope to see you back on the channel another time. Bye.
The rhythm.